Hello again and welcome back to the channel. My name is Annie and this is my creative detour. I hope you're all having a wonderful week and enjoying all your projects that you're working on. Today is the last day of the ABC April 2026 challenge and I'm working on letter Z. So it's been a wonderful month of doing some projects in the alphabet. A big thank you to Margaret at Seven Plaza and to Toni at Crafty by Toni for hosting this wonderful open challenge, and I've enjoyed making some things. Now, as I said, I'm working on letter Z today, and I'm making some zigzag scrap strips. So out of my scrap bin, I am folding the scraps into a zigzag fold, and then I'm putting on some decorative trim that looks a little bit zigzaggy, and I'm sewing it on with a zigzag stitch on my machine. So a really quick project to do, but I'll get set up and I'll show you how I make them. Okay, so it is pretty easy and there's lots of different ways to make them, but I'm wanting to use up some of my paper scraps that I've got in my box on the desk next to me. So I'm pulling out any strips that I can use. That I've got two that are matching, so you can see that they match when I join them together, because when you're folding them you need to have two lengths of the same pattern, and I've been doing them somewhere around 3.5 centimeters to 4.5 centimeters depending on what piece of scrap I pulled out. They're not all exactly the same width, but the important thing is that the two strips are the same width. So this one here is 4.3 centimeters, which is just under 1 3/4 inches. There's one that I did at 3.8, which is 1.5 inches. So it's not set in stone. Just use something that you can get two evenly sized strips of paper out of it. So to start, I just start folding. Now, some people would possibly score these, but I don't bother scoring. I like them to be a little bit random. So all I do is I fold it, and I fold it around about just roughly 1.5 centimeters. So around 5/8 of an inch. And then I bend it back on itself at around about 6 millimeters, which is 1/4 of an inch. So you can see that we're creating a Z. And I just keep doing that. And I don't worry about it if it's not exactly that size, but I kind of aim for that, and I do a little bit of a kink. You can see that it's starting to get a little bit of a zigzag fold in it. And I work my way all the way to the end of the strip. They do become a little bit uneven, but I don't worry about that. Some of them are a little bit wider than others. And then when I get to the end of the strip here, I give this a little bit of a burnish in the folded position. And then I just put this other one in here and sit it in that last fold and get a little bit of an idea of where to fold this one to start it off, and then I separate them because that's where it's going to glue. And then I do the folding on this one. And then I'll burnish this one. So there we go. I've got my two folds, and you can see that they're slightly different lengths, but that's okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this one to the top of that one. And I'm just going to use some art glitter glue. Glue it on, get it to set. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little dot of glue underneath the top of each fold just there, and I do it in about thirds. I do a third of it and then stop. So you can see just a little bit of glue, and then I'll hold those ones down, push them all down and get them to glue. Then I'll do the next third, and I repeat that all the way along the zigzags. So hold it down until the art glitter glue bites. And the reason I'm gluing it is because when I'm feeding it through my sewing machine, the folds on the back of it get caught on the plate, the feeding plate of my machine, if they're not glued down. So I just found it much easier if I glue them together. Just a tiny little dot, it just seems to sew through the machine a lot easier without catching. And then when it catches, the seam, the stitching gets all bunched up in the machine. Give that a little bit of a rub. Okay, so that's that side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat that gluing on the back, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to glue just a little dot under each fold. Okay, so I've given that a glue just on one side, so front and back on this edge here. I haven't glued this edge. I like it to still stay open, but just a little dot of glue to hold each one. So to be honest, if you don't have a sewing machine, don't rule out this project, because you could do this without having to sew it. It doesn't need to be sewn. It's with the art glitter glue, it stays glued shut perfectly well and works fine. So you don't have to stitch it. I'm just stitching it because my prompt is zigzag. So I'm looking for ways to get as many zigzags onto my make as I can. Okay, so you can see that it will do a little bit of a curl, and I don't worry about that. I know that when I glue that onto a pocket or a page edging, that it's going to work fine. So the next thing I'm going to do just simply is I'm going to run a holding stitch along this. So I'm just going to run a straight stitch all the way along there, around about 6 or 7 millimeters in, so a quarter of an inch in all the way along, and that will hold it steadfast. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch on some lace. So let me do those 2 runs first on the machine, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so there we go. I ran you can see that there's 2 stitches on the back. Oh, hope you might be able to see. So one of them was the holding stitch first, that just held the zigzag in place, and then the next one was just a straight stitch that I stitched on the lace. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on now some rickrack. Now I love light blue and red together. I'm going to use this red rickrack and stitch it on, and I'm going to stitch it on with red thread, so I'm going to have to change the bobbin and rethread my machine, but that's okay. And I'll do that and I'll come back to you. Okay, we had a few little bumps in the road because, like I said, the back of it gets caught a little bit on the plate, but it didn't move too much. The first ones that I did, which I'll show you, they got caught on the plate, the little folds, and it twisted the paper, and then my stitch and ribbon sort of went all haywire. But that's okay, they don't have to look perfect. So I'm just going to trim that down, because I've made them long enough so that they could be a page edge on a journal or on the edge of a pocket tidy up some of those threads. Okay, so I'm happy with that, and it's using up scrap out of my scrap bin, and I have a whole stack of trim. Now, if you don't have a sewing machine, like I said, you could glue your folds down, and I would put it under a really heavy book, something like that, and weight it and let it glue shut and dry completely. And then you could use some fabric glue and glue on your trim, and then do the same thing again. Glue it down and weight it. Maybe put some non-stick baking paper on top of it, and then put a couple of heavy books on top and weight it down and leave it overnight, and it would be fine. But doesn't it look lovely? And it's nice because it's paper, so it's scrunchy and crackly. If this was a frill out of fabric, it would be a lot more pliable and have a totally different texture. Both are nice, but I want to use up my paper stash, so it's a really good use of scraps. All right, let me pull out all of the ones that I made prior to coming onto camera. Okay, so here we go. Here's the ones that I've got made. I've got two others of the same of the ones that I made with you. It's got a zigzag pattern on some scrapbook paper, and I've used double-sided because you will see it potentially on the edge of the page. So there's two of those. Then we have this paper here. Now that's off of the same paper, but depending where you cut it from, the pattern is different, but you can see that they marry together. And I did it exactly the same way, except this one I put some ribbon on it, and I expressed the zigzag stitch on it so that you would see the zigzag stitch. And this one I used a little bit of trim, and it's got a little bit of a zigzag pattern to it, and then I did a zigzag stitch on top of some ribbon. This one here has a piece of pink ribbon that has a little bit of a chevron pattern on it. Then that's that trim that I've sewn onto it, and you can see that it's just a nice edge to it, and you can see that it just adds a little bit of dimension and texture. And then this was the very first one I did, and I can show you. So see here where I went a little bit skew-whiff, and it sort of pushed the ribbon off of the back. It's a bit crooked on the back, and that was because it got caught on the plate of the machine. So I changed how I did it. I made sure that I glued this down on the other ones so that they would sit a little bit easier for me. There we go. There's the polka dot one. Now let's pull out my journal and stick one in. Okay, I think that I like this page here that's got some of the stamped translucent tissue paper. I think I'm going to glue it onto this pocket here. Now it's stitched shut already, so I can't adjust that, but I'm going to glue it onto there, right onto the edge, and trim it down. I think it'll look nice there. So I'm going to run a reasonable bead of glue all along the edge of that pocket, and dip the end into it, and then line it up, and then we'll cut it down. And I'm actually going to glue the ends down now. So I'm not sure whether you can see, I'm going to glue along that edge and glue that down. Make sure that it's secure. I'll glue the other end down. There we go. That looks nice in there, doesn't it? Let me see if I can find something to tuck. So there we go. You can see there's the pocket. That looks nice on the edge of the pocket, doesn't it? And if you don't glue down the other side, it tucks on this side as well. There we go. I'm really happy with how they turned out. They got lots of texture to them because they're paper, and they're super easy to make, and they use up your scraps. So there we go. There's my last project for the month for ABC April 2026. and it is Zigzag scrap strips. So I hope you really enjoyed those today, and I hope you've had a fantastic month participating in the challenge. It's been lots of fun, and making unusual things that we don't normally make. I wouldn't normally make something like this, so that's always a win. So that's all from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you again for all of your lovely comments and your likes and hypes while I'm away on my videos. I'm so thrilled that you are enjoying them, and I have got some more projects that I pre-recorded for you for the month of May. So if you like the project today in the video, give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing to the channel. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend making something fun and new. And I will see you all very soon with another project. Bye for now.